3 heartbeats. That's all that stood between a billion-dollar empire and complete annihilation. When a mud-covered homeless woman crashed through cathedral doors and tackled the city's most feared crime lord at the altar, everyone thought she was insane. But when the explosion tore through the church exactly 3 seconds later, obliterating everything where he'd been standing, they realized she was the only sane person in the room. This is the story of how the invisible saved the untouchable, and why what happened next will restore your faith in humanity. Before we dive into this incredible true story, I need your help. My mom bet me this video wouldn't hit 10,000 views or get 1,000 subscribers. She said nobody cares about these stories anymore. Prove her wrong. Smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. Let's make this go viral and show that kindness still matters. Now, let's get into this unbelievable story. The morning sun barely penetrated the stained glass windows of Sacred Heart Cathedral, casting fractured rainbows across marble floors worth more than most people's homes. Today wasn't a celebration of love. It was a business transaction wrapped in silk and roses. Min-ho, 24 years old and already commanding the most powerful criminal organization in the Southern District, stood before a mirror adjusting his diamond cufflinks. His reflection showed a man who looked like he was preparing for his own funeral rather than his wedding day. And in a way, he was. This wasn't his choice. This was survival. He was marrying Yuna, the cold, calculating daughter of crime lord Chairman Kim, whose northern empire had been at war with Min-ho's family for over a decade. The marriage was supposed to be a peace treaty signed in holy matrimony instead of blood. But Min-ho had learned long ago that peace in his world was just war wearing a prettier mask. His right-hand man, a mountain of muscle named Tae-sung, stood by the door, scanning for threats with trained paranoia. "Boss, the guests are arriving. Chairman Kim's convoy just pulled up." Min-ho nodded, swallowing the knot of dread in his throat. He didn't trust Kim. The man smiled like a politician while plotting like a demon. And Yuna was her father's daughter, beautiful, brilliant, and utterly ruthless. But the contracts were signed. The families were watching. There was no escape. What Min-ho didn't know was that his only hope for survival was currently digging through garbage 4 blocks away, fighting rats for scraps of bread. Her name was Ji-won, and at 23, the streets had tried their best to erase her. Once, she'd had dreams. A college education, a career, a family. But a series of tragedies, job loss, illness, betrayal, had stripped away everything until she was left with nothing but the clothes on her back and the determination not to let the city break her spirit. Her dress, once a soft caramel color, now hung on her skeletal frame like a burial shroud, stained with the proof of survival, dirt, rain, desperation. She hadn't eaten a real meal in 4 days. Her stomach had stopped screaming and started whispering, which the veterans of the streets told her was worse. But Ji-won had something the city couldn't steal, her humanity. Today, hunger had led her to the cathedral's service entrance. Rich people's weddings meant catered food, and catered food meant waste. She'd learned to time her scavenging to the cleanup crews who sometimes took pity and looked the other way. She crept along the alley behind the massive stone church, staying in the shadows, invisible as always. That's when she saw it. A black, unmarked van, idling with predatory stillness near the maintenance entrance. 2 men emerged, not dressed in catering whites or security blacks, but in tactical gear that screamed military precision. They hauled heavy duffel bags with the kind of careful urgency that made her blood run cold. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run. Mind your business. Stay invisible. Stay alive. But she couldn't move. She watched, transfixed with horror, as the men slipped through a basement door that led directly beneath the cathedral's main altar. Timers set for the vows, one of them muttered, checking his watch. Chairman Kim wants total elimination of the Groom's faction. Make it look like a gas leak. Ji-won's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp that could have gotten her killed. A bomb. They were planting a bomb under the altar. The Groom, that young man she'd seen on the news broadcasts in shop windows, the one they called the Prince of the Underworld, was walking into his own execution. She should run. She should hide. She was nobody. A ghost. Why should she care if criminals killed each other? But as she stood there, trembling in the shadows, She thought about all the times people had walked past her, refused to see her, treated her like garbage. She'd lost faith in many things, but not in the fundamental truth that a life was a life. Even a criminal's life was still a life. She had to warn him. Panic flooded her veins as G1 sprinted around the perimeter of the cathedral, searching desperately for a way inside. The main entrance was fortified with security guards built like tanks, their eyes scanning for threats in designer suits, not homeless women. She approached anyway, her bare feet slapping against the concrete. "Please," she gasped, reaching for the nearest guard. "There's a bomb inside. You have to stop the wedding." The guard's face twisted in disgust. He didn't see a person. He saw trash. "Get lost, junkie," he snarled, shoving her so hard she stumbled backward onto the pavement. "We don't have time for your crazy stories. Move along before I have you arrested." "Please, you don't understand." "I understand you're high or insane. Either way, you're not getting near this building." G1 scrambled to her feet, tears of frustration burning her eyes. Inside, she could hear the organ beginning to play. The ceremony was starting. How much time did she have? 5 minutes? 3? She ran to a side entrance used by the choir. Locked. She found a window, too high to reach. The panic was becoming a living thing inside her chest, clawing at her throat. Then she spotted it, a narrow maintenance door, partially hidden behind overgrown ivy. She grabbed a loose brick from the garden bed and smashed the lock with desperate strength. The sound was loud, but the organ music covered it. She slipped inside into a dimly lit corridor that smelled of incense and old wood. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain someone would hear it. She crept forward, following the sound of the organ until she found a curtain separating the sacristy from the main hall. Peering through a tiny gap, she saw them. Hundreds of guests in designer clothes and diamonds. At the altar, Minho stood rigid, his jaw clenched, next to a woman in white who smiled like a viper. The priest raised his hands, beginning the ceremony. If anyone here has reason why these two should not be wed. How ironic. The biggest reason was ticking away beneath their feet. G1's eyes frantically scanned the altar, searching for any sign of the device. Nothing visible. It was underneath, hidden, waiting. She looked at her reflection in a brass candlestick nearby. Filthy. Emaciated. Invisible. But right now, she was the only person who could save him. She didn't think. She just moved. G1 exploded through the curtain like a hurricane made of desperation and rags. The organ swelled for the vows, momentarily covering the sound of her bare feet slapping marble. But the guests saw her, their faces transforming from boredom to shock to outrage in rapid succession. Security reached for weapons. The priest froze mid-blessing. Yuna's face contorted in fury. But G1 only had eyes for one person. Minho turned, his expression cycling through confusion, then alarm as this wild, desperate woman sprinted straight at him. "Run!" she screamed, but her voice was lost in the shocked murmurs and the organ's crescendo. She didn't slow down. With every ounce of strength her malnourished body could muster, she launched herself at him, grabbing fistfuls of his expensive tuxedo and yanking him backward with the force of pure adrenaline. Minho, trained fighter that he was, could have resisted. Could have thrown her off. But something in her eyes, wild terror mixed with absolute certainty, made him stumble backward with her instead. They crashed off the platform together, tumbling toward the side exit. She kicked it open with her foot, and they spilled out into the alley in a tangle of limbs and fabric. 3 seconds later, the world exploded. The shockwave hit them like a physical wall, throwing them further into the alley. The sound was apocalyptic, a roar that devoured all other noise, followed by the crystalline rain of 1,000 stained glass windows shattering simultaneously. Fire belched from the cathedral's mouth, and Minho watched from the dirty alley floor as the altar where he'd been standing was consumed by an inferno that would have left nothing of him but ash and expensive dental work. For several seconds, there was only ringing silence and smoke. Then Minho rolled over, coughing, and saw her. G1 lay crumpled a few feet away, covered in dust and debris, blood trickling from a cut on her temple. She looked like a broken angel, fallen from a heaven that had forgotten her. "Hey!" Minho crawled to her, ignoring the screaming pain in his shoulder. "Hey, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and dazed. Did we make it?" Minho looked back at the burning cathedral, at the death he'd escaped by mere seconds, and felt something crack open in his chest. Something that felt suspiciously like gratitude mixed with awe. "Yeah," he whispered, his voice rough with smoke and emotion. "We made it. Because of you." Through the smoke and chaos, figures emerged from the back of the cathedral parking lot. Not firefighters. Not paramedics. Chairman Kim, flanked by his enforcers, with Yuna at his side. They weren't running in panic. They were walking with the casual purpose of men coming to confirm a kill. When Chairman Kim saw Minho rising from the debris, very much alive, his face went through a fascinating journey: shock, disappointment, then a carefully constructed mask of fake concern. "Minho," Kim called out, approaching with outstretched hands. "Thank God you're alive. The gas line must have..." "Gas line?" Minho interrupted, his voice dangerously calm as he helped Ji-won to her feet, keeping her behind him. "Really? That's your story?" "A gas line that exploded exactly during the vows." Yuna stepped forward, her wedding dress pristine except for some artful ash smudges. Her eyes locked onto Ji-won with pure venom. Who is this filthy creature? And why is she still breathing? The slip was small but devastating. Minho laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Why is she still breathing? That's your question? Not is my husband safe?" He took a step forward, and Kim's men tensed. "You missed, Kim. Your elaborate assassination failed because you overlooked the one person in this entire city with an actual conscience." The tension snapped taut like a wire about to break. Chairman Kim's facade crumbled. He gestured sharply to his men. "Finish it. No witnesses." But before guns could clear holsters, the roar of engines filled the alley. Minho's security team, led by Tae-sung, screeched in with 3 armored vehicles, boxing in Kim's small crew. Doors flew open and a small army emerged, weapons trained. The tables had flipped. Within seconds, Chairman Kim and Yuna were on their knees in the dirt, their assassination plot unraveling faster than their dignity. But Minho had already turned away from them. Revenge could wait. He had something more important to attend to. Ji-won had slid down the wall, her adrenaline crashing, shock taking over. She looked impossibly small and fragile. Minho knelt beside her, taking her rough, trembling hands in his. "Hey, look at me. You're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you." "I just..." Ji-won's voice broke. "I heard them talking. I couldn't let you die. You didn't even know me." "A life is a life," she whispered simply. "Doesn't matter whose." The purity of that statement hit Minho harder than the explosion. In his world, lives were currency. To her, they were sacred. He carefully lifted her in his arms. "Tae-sung, get the car. Hospital. Now. Not for me. For her." 5 days later, sunshine flooded the penthouse suite of the city's premier private hospital. Ji-won sat propped up in bed, wearing a clean gown, her hair washed and shining, her stomach finally full for the first time in years. The doctors had treated her concussion, burns, and severe malnutrition. They said she'd make a complete recovery, which felt like a miracle. The door opened, and Minho walked in. Not in a suit or tactical gear, but in a simple sweater and jeans. He looked human. Real. He carried an envelope and a serious expression. "The doctors say you're healing perfectly," he said, pulling up a chair. "Thank you for all this," Ji-won said quietly. "I can't possibly repay." "Repay?" Minho interrupted with a soft laugh. "Ji-won, you gave me my life. There's no currency for that." He leaned forward. "Chairman Kim and his daughter are in prison. The evidence was overwhelming. The war is over. I won. Because you had the courage to act when everyone else chose to look away." He handed her the envelope. Inside is a deed to a 3-bedroom apartment in the safest part of the city. Fully paid for. There's also a bank account in your name with enough money to ensure you never worry about food, shelter, or safety again. Ji-won stared at the envelope, tears streaming down her face. Why? I'm just... You're not just anything, Min-ho said firmly. You're a hero. You're the most honorable person I've ever met. This isn't charity. This is justice. This is you finally getting what you always deserved. He stood, moving toward the door, then paused. And Ji-won? When you're ready to figure out what you want to do with your new life, school, career, anything, you call me. You have family now. As the door closed, Ji-won looked at the envelope in her trembling hands, then out at the city that had tried to erase her. The invisible girl had saved the city's most powerful man. And he had pulled her from the darkness, proving that sometimes, kindness is repaid by those who understand its true value. So here's what I want you to take from this story. Ji-won had every reason to walk away. She was homeless, hungry, invisible. Nobody would have blamed her for minding her own business. But she chose to act because she believed a life mattered, regardless of whose it was. That choice changed everything. Now I'm asking you to make a choice. Hit that subscribe button. Prove to my mom that stories about courage and kindness still matter in this world. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and I believe this community is full of people who still believe in humanity. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that good people still exist. Because they do. You're one of them. I'll see you in the next story. Stay kind. Stay strong. And never forget, you never know when your small act of courage might save someone's life. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment where you are watching from.